In December 2025, as BTS gradually re-entered the public spotlight following the completion of mandatory military service by all 7 members, Korean media attention naturally turned toward 2 figures who have long embodied emotional contrast within the group, Jimin and Jungkook. Their latest joint appearance, most notably through newly released variety and documentary-style content, has sparked widespread discussion across Korean entertainment media. Headlines did not focus on controversy, numbers, or scandals. Instead, they focused on something far more subtle and arguably more powerful: the contrast and personality between Jimin and Jungkook, and how that contrast now feels deeper, calmer, and more mature than ever before. For longtime fans, this dynamic is familiar. Yet in the post-military context of late 2025, media observers argue that something has fundamentally shifted. The contrast no longer feels playful or youthful. It feels intentional, reflective, and emblematic of a group entering its next chapter. Several Korean outlets have emphasized that the differing personalities of Jimin and Jungkook should not be viewed as opposites in tension, but rather as complementary forces that elevate their joint presence. Jimin is consistently described using terms such as introspective, emotionally articulate, and attentive to atmosphere. Jungkook, on the other hand, is portrayed as grounded, unfiltered, and present-focused. These descriptions are not new, but the tone surrounding them has evolved. Post-military, the contrast appears less performative and more natural. Media analysts suggest that both artists now carry a sense of quiet confidence, shaped by time away from the spotlight and structured discipline during service. Rather than competing for attention, their differences now form a narrative of balance. In recent footage, Jimin's presence has drawn attention for its restraint. Where he was once known for overt emotional expression, he now communicates through pauses, careful phrasing, and attentive listening. Korean commentators note that Jimin often takes on the role of emotional anchor, guiding conversations, acknowledging tension, and subtly redirecting moments that could become awkward or overwhelming. This behavior has been interpreted not as performance, but as growth. Media psychologists quoted in entertainment columns suggest that Jimin's post-military demeanor reflects an increased awareness of group dynamics and audience perception. His emotional intelligence, long recognized by fans, now appears sharpened by maturity. Jungkook's portrayal in December 2025 media coverage centers on ease. Rather than actively leading conversations, he allows moments to unfold organically. He reacts honestly, speaks without overthinking, and appears comfortable with silence, something Korean media describes as a significant change from earlier years. This relaxed authenticity has resonated strongly with audiences. Viewers describe Jungkook as stable, grounded, and emotionally present, rather than energetic or hyper-focused on performance. Industry analysts argue that Jungkook's strength lies in his ability to normalize the extraordinary, to exist naturally within a highly produced environment without appearing detached or overwhelmed. One of the most discussed elements in media coverage is how military service affected both artists differently. Jimin appears to have internalized the experience emotionally, reflecting on it through conversation and tone. Jungkook, meanwhile, seems to have integrated the experience physically and mentally, showing increased composure rather than verbal reflection. This divergence has become a focal point for analysts, who argue that it demonstrates how shared experiences do not produce identical outcomes, even among close companions. Instead, the contrast highlights individuality within unity, a theme increasingly emphasized in BTS's post-military narrative. Korean broadcasters and critics repeatedly emphasize that the appeal of Jimin and Jungkook's chemistry lies not in similarity, but in contrast without friction. When Jimin speaks thoughtfully, Jungkook listens attentively. When Jungkook jokes casually, Jimin responds with warmth rather than control. These micro-interactions create a sense of realism that audiences find deeply comforting. Media analysts describe this as unforced chemistry, a rare quality that cannot be scripted or trained.
Global fan reactions have mirrored media analysis. Rather than expressing shock, many fans describe the contrast as something they have always known, but now see more clearly. Online discussions highlight appreciation for the duo's growth rather than nostalgia for their younger dynamic. Fans note that the emotional space between them feels safe, mutual, and respectful. Importantly, the discourse has remained largely positive and reflective, avoiding speculative or invasive narratives. In Korean culture, balance between emotional sensitivity and grounded presence is often viewed as ideal, particularly in leadership and long-term collaboration. Media experts suggest that Jimin and Jungkook now collectively represent this balance, making them powerful symbols of BTS's sustainability beyond youth-driven idol frameworks. Their contrast aligns with evolving public expectations of maturity, responsibility, and emotional depth in public figures. Entertainment insiders have pointed out that this contrast could play a crucial role in BTS's future group activities. Jimin's emotional articulation combined with Jungkook's stabilizing presence creates a duo dynamic capable of anchoring both music and public communication. Rather than dominating, they harmonize, setting a tone for the group's broader reintroduction. In the early years of BTS, the contrast between Jimin and Jungkook was often framed as playful duality. Media narratives leaned heavily on surface-level descriptors, Jimin as the sensitive performer, Jungkook as the energetic prodigy. Their differences were entertaining, sometimes even exaggerated for variety content. However, by December 2025, Korean media analysis suggests that this framing has fundamentally changed. What once felt like youthful contrast now reads as mature balance, a dynamic shaped not by scripted personas, but by lived experience. Military service, time away from constant public exposure, and personal growth have softened the edges of both identities. The result is not convergence, but clarity. One of the most striking elements highlighted by media critics is the increased use of silence in Jimin and Jungkook's interactions. In earlier content, silence was often quickly filled by jokes, reactions, or editing. In recent footage, silence is allowed to breathe. Jungkook appears comfortable sitting quietly, observing rather than reacting. Jimin, instead of rushing to interpret the moment, allows space before responding. Korean commentators interpret this as a sign of emotional security. In an industry where constant expression is often demanded, the ability to remain silent on screen and still hold attention is seen as a mark of confidence. Historically, Jimin has often been described as carrying emotional labor within the group, expressing gratitude, reassuring fans, and managing sensitive moments. While this role has not disappeared, its tone has changed. Rather than absorbing emotional weight, Jimin now appears to share it. Media analysts note that he no longer rushes to soften every moment. Instead, he acknowledges emotions without resolving them immediately. This subtle shift suggests a healthier boundary between public responsibility and personal presence. Entertainment psychologists quoted in Korean features argue that this evolution reflects a deeper understanding of emotional sustainability, an important development for long-term artists. Jungkook's transformation is perhaps most visible in what he no longer does. He reacts less impulsively. He speaks with fewer qualifiers. He seems uninterested in performing relatability, choosing instead to simply exist. This grounded demeanor has led media outlets to describe him as anchoring shared scenes, not through leadership, but through consistency. When paired with Jimin's reflective nature, Jungkook's steadiness creates a rhythm that feels natural rather than constructed. A recurring theme in December 2025 coverage is the idea that Jimin and Jungkook's closeness has not resulted in sameness.
Despite training together, debuting together, and serving in the military during overlapping periods, they processed their experiences differently. Media analysts emphasize that this divergence is healthy and rare in long-term partnerships. Rather than mirroring each other, they have allowed individual growth to coexist with shared history. This dynamic challenges common idol narratives that prioritize uniformity over individuality. Production staff commentary cited anonymously in Korean entertainment reports suggests that filming Jimin and Jungkook now requires less direction than before. Moments unfold naturally, reactions are not exaggerated, emotional beats are allowed to remain understated. This shift has changed how editors approach their footage. Instead of building tension or humor artificially, they allow authenticity to guide pacing. The result is content that feels less like a show and more like observation.